Okay, this is image 3. Image 3, we're going to do something kind of interesting. We are going to turn our pixel image into a vector image. So here we are in Photoshop. If we zoom in, it depends partly on your settings, but once you zoom in high enough, you can start to see each individual pixel in our pixel image. You remember everything I told you about pixel images versus vector images. We're going to turn this pixel image into a vector image in Illustrator. It will not have the same detail and clarity as the pixel image. However, you can get pretty close, and it will have all the advantages of a vector image in that you can zoom it way up. You can scale it indefinitely. You remember a pixel image, you cannot scale indefinitely. You have a point beyond which things start getting bitmapped and chunky. Alright, so this is our image 2 in Photoshop. We're going to switch gears, go to Illustrator, and we are going to open our Project 3 photo, image 2. So you're going to find your photo that you saved in of image 2. This is your retouched, color-corrected photo. You are going to, in Illustrator, open that image. And this is what you will see. Now, what is probably going to happen is that your... Oh, look at that. Illustrator made my artboard and my image the same size, which is wonderful. If you find that you have a situation that looks like this, where you have an artboard that appears much smaller than your image. This is the image, this is the artboard. That's sort of a problem. Because what is outside of the artboard, if you remember from our project 2, anything that's outside of the artboard is not going to show up. It's not going to print, it's not going to render to a PDF. It won't show up if you place it in another piece of art. So if you have that situation where your artboard is smaller than your image, you go to the Artboard tool and you pull out the edges. They will snap to the image edges. And you just make the artboard the same size as the image. Click off the Artboard tool and you're good to go. So there is a functionality in Illustrator called Image Trace. If you go to Object, Image Trace, well, you need to have the image selected first. So click on it with the black arrow tool, Object, Image Trace, Make. Hit OK, and it will process it. Now, we have a problem. You can see that that's based on the original image, but boy, does it look awful. That's because it just did black and white. It just did solid black, solid white. What you want to do is go here to the Image Trace panel. I think you can also get at it here, Window, Image Trace. These are all your fine controls for doing the image trace. So, it defaults to just pure black and white. But if you go to just even 16 colors, oh, you see you get a lot more of the original detail, and that's only 16 colors. If you go to high fidelity photo, which is what we want for this, you will get a much better result. Now your goal in doing this image trace is to create something that looks as close to the original photo as you can in vectors. You want it to look very, very similar. It will never look exactly the same, but you can see once you set it to high fidelity photo, wow, that looks pretty good. That's not too far off. If we start zooming in, well, you can see where it's drawing vector shapes to make highlights. You know, it is not exactly the same as our pixel image, of course, but it is doing a fairly good approximation. You have more controls, though. You can adjust the palette, the color palette here. You can control a lot of detail. Here, under the Advanced palette, so whatever I just did, automatic versus full tone, I think full tone was better. So I'm just going to go back one. It does take a while to process this every time. It is a little time intensive. That's just how it is. One thing that you can do is you can turn off the preview while you play with controls. So you have more or fewer colors, a higher or lower number of paths. I'm going to set this higher. The corners is an interesting one. The corners is an interesting one. So I'm going to show you, go to the extremes just to show you what it does. Less corners makes all the shapes it draws round. It makes things, I think it makes it a little bit smoother as vector art. But then I think it makes the image clarity a little bit worse. Well, not a lot of appreciable difference there. Let's go high here. All right, well, I take that all back. I'm not seeing a huge difference here for this image when I tweak the corners slider. It can make more or less of a difference depending on your image. I think it's more apparent the fewer colors you have. We're not seeing a huge difference, at least in my friend's face here. So the thing to do is once you have gone through this and done a set of settings that you think looks good, so that same thing of holding down the spacebar in here will give you will let you navigate around. So once you have this, Command 0 always brings the whole image into place on the screen. Command 1 always shows it to you at 100%. Command 0 shows you the whole image. Plus and minus, as you already know, scale up and down. Zoom in and out, I should say. I'm going to tweak the noise here a little bit. See if that gives us an appreciable difference. The thing you want to do when you have tweaked this and adjusted it, and you think you've got the best adaptation into vector that you can get, then you need to do something called expanding it. It does all of this computation in preview mode. It has not actually converted it to vector art yet. So if you remember in Illustrator, you have you can switch between outline mode and preview mode. Well, in outline mode, you can see this is just a box. That's because it's still a pixel image. Command Y toggles between outline and preview. If we go back to preview, well, it looks like everything's been done. It looks like it's been vectorized, but that's the thing. It's all in preview. So what you have to do is you have to expand it. So with the photo selected, you go up here, tracing result, expand. That actually converts it to vector objects. And you can see when we go to preview mode, oh wow, every little part of this is now a vector drawing with a different fill color. Okay? That expand is very important. That's actually what turns this into a piece of vector art. So, once you've done all that, then you want to save as your image 3. I would remove the TIFF. It's going to add an AI extension for Adobe Illustrator format. You could also save it as an Illustrator EPS or a PDF or an SVG or any of these things, any of these other vector formats. I would just leave it as an AI and save. And that's how you create image 3, which is a piece of vector art based on your photo. Vector. So now this image you can scale up and make it a billboard in Times Square, because remember, vector images you can scale indefinitely. And that's the end of this video. The additional images will be in